Russ Kickle here with another episode of American Reef. On today's show, we're going to head back over Mike Paletta's and check out and see how the transition from his old tank to the new tank went. So before we head on over to Mike's, there were two interesting videos released this week. One of them was by Premium Aquatics on their YouTube channel, where they actually talked about Reef Bright products that weren't lights. And for me, I really didn't know that Reef Bright did anything other than lights. So again, that was very illuminating, so to speak. Sorry for the choice of words there. And then the second one was on the Bulk Reef Supply YouTube channel. They did another episode on the Worldwide Corals recipe, right? And on this one, it was basically a 4-month cycle. And they talk about those details. Again, new hobbyists, definitely go and check it out. So it's worth the time watching. And as always, again, if you are looking for what I consider one of the best fish foods on the planet, check out American Reef's HPD, available at AmericanReefHPD.com. Now let's check out how the transition from the old tank to the new tank went for Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Hello, Russ.
Hold it. You got two hands, right?
Two hands.
They survived the move?
They got pretty cut up and pretty beaten up while cutting pipe with the big scissors.
Yeah.
I messed up and sliced through my thumb through the nail. Yeah, that left a mark.
Yeah.
It took a good 6 weeks for that to totally heal and go off, so it was not pleasurable.
Was this during, okay, remember, so last time when we talked, you were going to allow 24 hours to kind of get a temporary setup going. Was it during that period of time?
No, it was right for the transition. When I started moving things, I was cutting pipe to get things done.
Yeah.
And I was in a hurry and not paying attention, and
Boom.
yeah. And I didn't realize how sharp a pipe cutter is.
Yeah, because you know you're click, click, click.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, so it'll go through your nail, no problem.
It went through it like butter.
Okay.
Yeah, and blend like worse.
Okay, so
Thank God for super glue. I super glued it.
really, is that what you did?
That's what I always use.
And it worked right.
People think I'm insane, but I've super glued literally all my fingers.
Yeah, well, hey,
And I had to keep super gluing the thumbnail for a month.
really?
So I didn't pull it off. That would have been worse. So yeah.
And to boot, your hands were probably all in water, right? So that was always coming off.
That's why it was it was bad. But we're through that. We're through the initial transition.
Yeah.
Everything moved from old tank to new tank. Took about 18 hours, which is what I allotted 24, so it took 18.
Hold on. When you did that, okay, so you had it planned out where basically you were going to take the, the top off, so to speak, and cut some glass out, and boom. Right, that was going to come. Did it really come apart?
I took the top canopy off the tank, took all the corals out and put them in boxes on the floor.
Okay.
Took all the live rock, cleaned it, took out as many of the vermitid worms, vagina anemones, algae, anything that I didn't like. I scrubbed with a wire brush, cleaned it, put it in, put the corals back in, took the fish out of the tank, put it in, ran that for a week, 10 days.
Okay, so that process there took you 18 hours.
Yeah.
Right, and. Okay, did you come across any kind of didn't think of that, right?
No.
Like when you were cutting the glass, for example. Or
No. That was a whole separate thing. This is just transitioning the corals, live rock, and fish from the 300 into here.
Okay, so hold it. So it took you 18 hours just to move your crap from one tank to another and not kill anything.
Right.
Okay.
That was the plan, and that's what I did. Because I didn't use all the water from the new tank, wasn't full of new water, and I didn't use all the water from the old tank. but I used enough of it that it was a
Sure.
major water change. But it didn't stress anything because the water in here had been running for a week. It was matched for alkalinity, it was matched for temperature, it was matched for salinity, obviously.
Right.
And then everything was put in and it was good.
Got it. So then from there, that was, whew, okay, everything's got a home.
Right. Then there was a 40-gallon sump here with a skimmer in it and a pump, and one of the overflows was attached to it.
Okay.
It wasn't running obviously at full bore, but
Right.
it was circulating enough water, and the skimmer was taking out enough gunk that the system was working. The lights were on. That was the other thing I had to do because I took all the lights off. Then I had to put all the lights on. That took a significant period of time because these are not. They're easy, but they're not as easy as you would think once
Right.
the tank is full. I can't stand in the tank to put the lights on.
Right.
So that took time.
How did you get the one way in the back corner?
I can fortunately have very long arms, as you can see. I
Okay.
can reach pretty much everything in the tank.
Okay, good deal.
So I did that, put it in the back, and we were good.
Okay. And so that was 18 hours to get you to the point where you were, okay. Now I got a little time to breathe.
Right.
Right?
So then I set this up for a week.
Okay.
Everything was running, everything was fine. In that time, I started taking out everything I could and dismantling the tank. I mean, the interesting things were how much detritus I saw in the old tank. Even though I was doing a 25-gallon water
Yeah,
change in that
yeah.
tank every week, sucking out as much detritus, there was almost 20 pounds of detritus in the
Oh,
bottom.
pounds.
That's not including all the little tiny dead coral skeletons that were down there. That's
Sure.
just pounds of brown muck.
Right.
Because I could literally scoop it out.
And you had tons of flow in there too, right?
Not enough.
Obviously.
You always get a dead spot, and wherever the dead spots were, they were packed that I couldn't get to. The far right side was jam-packed. That's why there's no overflows in the tank here. There's nothing down at the bottom. Everything's allowed to flow, and it goes right over the overflow, and I get a fair amount of detritus out easily.
Right. Okay, so back to, so when you were taking your tank apart, you noticed tons of gunk and stuff there. What else kind of like struck you?
There were how many vermitid worms there were on virtually every surface, everything, on wires for pumps, on
Really?
everything.
Really?
So I had cutters and cut them off of everything. I got rid of literally hundreds of them, but there's still some in here that I have to go after.
Wow. Okay. So again, out of sight, out of mind, so to speak. So things.
No,
just
I knew
grow.
they were there.
Okay.
And I got rid of the ones I could, but I couldn't get rid of the ones that obviously were under rocks behind, because they're wherever there's flow.
Right. Okay, so you go and you had this plan to actually take and literally just take the canopy off and cut down on the seams. How did that go?
Well, that was the next step. That was a
Okay.
week later after I let my hands heal a little bit. It was time to tear down the old tank, because unfortunately I couldn't take the 300-gallon out once I had the 500 in.
Right.
Because there was only roughly a foot in between, and I couldn't make the turn, and I couldn't get people behind it to lift it, turn it, move it. It was not going to happen.
Right,
Plus,
right.
there was a big scratch across the front because it was a low iron glass. This has no low iron glass on it. And people go, why aren't you using that? It's better
Right.
optical clarity.
Yeah.
With the blue LED lights, you can't see
Really?
optical clarity.
Okay.
So there's no difference, and that glass is significantly softer than is the hard glass.
Okay.
So everyone I know that is running low iron glass
Yep.
also typically has a scratch somewhere.
Sure.
And the scratch is more noticeable to me and to most people than is the optical clarity. Particularly with running LEDs, now you can't do it.
Right.
Now there's 8 Radion LEDs on here, 6 from the old tank, 2 new ones, and basically everything is lit. Everything seems to be pretty happy in here.
Right.
I've not lost any corals or anything of substance since I've moved it over. I lost a couple fish that got sucked into various pumps. Other than that, we've been pretty good, pretty lucky with everything.
Yeah.
So then once we did what we did, a week, 10 days later, I can't remember what it was,
Right.
I tore down the old tank. Basically realized how much damage salt water does to wood over time. Took the entire stand apart with crowbars, hammers, and took it out piece by piece.
Well, no, that's the question. Okay, so it was sitting, the wood was sitting on that salt-watered base kind of tank and all that. How was
Well, it
it?
was also sitting on carpeting that had
Yes.
gotten flooded too. It was more or less rotted.
Okay, so then it was a matter of months.
It was a matter of time.
Okay.
I don't know how much time, but it was not a long time.
God, it's not
So
years.
in the tank, because I couldn't sell, I didn't want to sell it. I
Right.
did initially, but once I saw it, there was no reason. I couldn't do it in good conscience. Figured out from the help from the people that built this tank that
Right.
the easiest way to cut glass, cut the seams, is not with a razor blade, not with a saw, but with piano wire.
Right.
But you can't buy a single strand of piano wire, I found. But what you can buy is a cheese knife.
Yes.
So the cheese knife had long wire on it. I was 6 inches down and the wire split. So then I had to wrap the wire on my fingers and go down and slice it.
And that didn't hurt your finger?
Yes,
oh,
it did.
Yeah, okay.
So I wrapped my fingers in a towel and then wrapped the wire around that. But it went through it like nothing. Where I have taken apart smaller tanks with razor blades.
Right.
And it took hours. It took literally 5 minutes to dismantle the front of the tank.
Really? Okay.
Pull it apart, slice inside with a razor blade where the silicone was. And it was too heavy for me to lift by myself. So my cousin Chris came over, lifted it. Then we took off the two sides. Well, actually what we had to do, we had to take the two sides off before we could take the front and the back off. Because what you had to do was bend it over front and back to flex it to get the silicone to break. And then we did the back, then we did the base. And the base was the heaviest piece of glass there by far.
Yeah.
Moved that out. Then I tore apart the stand. Which was, it was bad. And then lifted the top off the stand because it was a flat piece of wood.
Right.
And then the sump and everything else came out. And those were also interesting and tricky.
Yeah, so tell me about that, right? In other words, not only the things behind it, but was there much water damage from being like, again, underneath that tank with, there's only one place for that water
There was
to
water
go.
damage on the bottom. This is sitting on a cement slab, so it didn't do any damage there.
Wall?
It also damaged the wall because the wall was just regular drywall and it acts like a wick.
Right.
So I literally took out the entire drywall, put in waterproof drywall, then I put tile up against it. So now if anything splashes against it, all it is cleaning hard tile. I mean, I've learned how to do tile. I've learned how to grout. While I was drilling the sink for in there, I drilled into the water pipe. So I learned how to cut copper pipe and fix that. So I do pretty much everything but electrical. Because electrical, you can burn down a house.
Right.
Plumbing, for the most part, unless you really screw up, you shouldn't burn down the house.
Right, you just flood it.
Yeah, you flood it, which I've done. But now all this tile is done in the entire house. Everything's waterproof. Everything's watertight. Everything, from my point of view, that can leak is now sitting inside the shower in the bathroom.
Right.
So no more overflows there. Plus, I took out all the drywall in the bathroom and put waterproof drywall up there. I took off the vanity that had also been damaged from water from things overflowing.
Right.
It's now brand new.
Right.
It's also been epoxied on the bottom, so it's waterproof.
Sure.
So now with the sump, which you've shown them, there's now a 180-gallon sump that I can walk to. There was nothing under the tank that's difficult to get to. The electronics for the lights and the electronics for the pumps are on there, and they're on the magnets as I showed you.
Right.
But I can get to everything, and everything is basically on a switch. Every light is on an individual switch, so I can turn them on and off.
Right.
All the pumps are on 2 blocks. I can push those off, turn off all the flow in the tank. And if I want to turn off the other flow, I flick one switch, turn one valve,
Boom.
boom. No flow into the tank, everything's done.
So let's talk about that flow piece of it, because like I said, for me, when I looked at your overflows, right, and seeing how the gravity fed and they go all the way up to the other side, right?
Right.
Explain that a little bit, right?
But what I wanted to do was not run a lot of pumps and a lot of electricity. I promised myself I would not be running 37 electrical outlets on various things. The old tank had 37 things powering it.
Right.
This tank so far has 22. There will be probably 4 or 6 more things going on. But there'll be a couple other things going off. So basically the flow goes over the overflow, which is on one side of the tank. It goes all the way to the floor, goes across the floor, comes back up and runs into the frag tank. So all the flow that's going into here runs into the frag tank from the overflows. Even with that though, because it's an overflow from here, a lot of the detritus is settling into the frag tank. So I didn't think of that initially, duh. So what I had to do, I put 2 powerful water pumps, power heads in the bottom. So every night when I'm feeding the tank, I crank the power heads on. So for an hour they run, they blow all the detritus off. But just from letting the detritus sit there for 2 weeks, I started growing tons of hair algae and babesia and other nasty things. So now I turn it on for an hour a night when I'm feeding the tank. It's gradually going away. But there's none in these 2 tanks, which is interesting. In the frag tank or in the nano tank, but there is some in the frag tank because there's nothing in there. Eventually I will probably put a couple of fox faces in there to eat any kind of algae that pops up. There's a bunch of snails, but they don't eat it fast enough.
Right. And so, okay, I know when we had talked last time, you said that fine, after, you kind of got rid of the old tank, you were going to put that 180 in after you kind of did the home remodeling stuff. Did that
Right,
just
we did
go
the
right
home
in?
remodeling stuff. That took an extra 2 weeks beyond what I thought. That's
Okay,
why it took a while
okay.
to do this.
Okay.
So, I mean, doing drywall, and drywall
Yeah.
takes a day to dry. It's not like
Right.
you put the mud on and it's ready to go. It takes a day to dry solidly. Sand it, find out where the problems are, remud
Right.
it, do it again.
Right.
That added a significant amount of time to get this up.
And now, did you worry about the dust going in the tank and stuff like that when you
I covered it
sanded
with plastic,
Okay.
but a couple times a fair amount of dust came in here and it clouded the water up.
Okay.
But it's basically inert, so it didn't seem to bother anything.
Okay. Good
And a
deal.
lot of it got sucked out and into the filter socks.
Sure.
So then the water, as we were talking about overflow, it goes down the overflow,
Yep.
across the floor, back up into the frag tank, blows across the frag tank. There's then 2 overflows to the top of the frag tank. They suck the water down. They then blow it to the end of the sump, cross bio balls, over 2 or 3 baffles, through some live rock, past the protein skimmer, over 2 more baffles, into where the pump is and where the carbon reactor is. I don't run the carbon reactor all the time, but if I run something that I want to get taken out, or if the water starts to look
Sure,
cloudy,
sure.
I crank the carbon reactor on for a day. Water's crystal clear by the next day.
And now you also have this little tank here plumbed into it too, right?
Right, I have the nano tank is also plumbed into it. It has its own little MP10 pump on it. No detritus seems to settle there, because once I crank on the MP10 and with the flow going in, there's an 1.5 inch overflow.
Right.
Draws all the water out. It keeps the tank really nice and clean. I feed the tank pretty aggressively, and the corals seem to be happy for it. I have Gonioporas, LPS, ACAN, stuff like that.
Right.
Lobos. Everybody's seemingly growing and happy in that tank so far.
Right. Okay, so in general terms, as far as flow and just, how you kind of had it in your mind versus, again, reality, what things worked, what things didn't work?
I would like more flow in here, even though I have a quote-unquote ton of flow.
Yeah, okay, well, what do you have?
Right now I have 3 Tunzi streams on one side.
Right, the stream 3s, right?
Stream 3s.
Right.
I have another Tunzi stream down here because there was a dead spot. 3 MP60s at the top. And currently 2 Tunzi, I think 6155 or 6511.
Sure, yeah.
Flowing in the corners. There's going to be 2 more of those. What I'm trying to do is get as much flow as I can in the tank. Because right now, there's a fair amount of coral in here, but it's nothing like it's going to be. And I know the flow is going to be inadequate as I add more corals.
Right.
So I want to jack up the flow even more in this tank. I mean, I really want to have, roughly, this is 500 gallons. I want to be running at least 30,000 gallons
Right.
of flow in here an hour.
Right.